This is Gabriella Hoffman, freelance journalist. I am joined by a very special guest, and we're going to be populating more content here that is not necessarily fitting into any box. Lesia Dubenko is a Ukrainian Gen Zer. She's in politics, and I first learned about Lesia when my friend and colleague Megan Mobbs was interacting with her because of just this weird divide happening among Americans and Ukrainians when there shouldn't really be a divide. There's actually a lot in common. And Lesia is going to talk about her country, why Ukraine wants to work more with Americans, and kind of this like gray area that is not often talked about in this discourse. So, Lesia, thank you for coming on and talking with me.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself.
Thanks
So
for having me.
you're from Ukraine. You live there.
Yes.
You travel along there. What is the situation like right now?
So I'm a Ukrainian journalist and analyst, and I've been featured in a host of different publications like the Financial Times and New Eastern Europe and Political Europe, and I also have like my own Substack, and right now I also write for Times of Israel. Like I have a blog because I have some Jewish blood in me, and yeah. So the thing is, when it comes to Ukraine, what the situation is like, well, I guess, it's war. It's like it's a really bad war and it's happening every day. There's no stopping to it. And a lot of focus right now is on Gaza. But Ukraine is, in my opinion, because it's the country I come from, right? So I should be caring more about Ukraine. But it's no less bad. And, Russia is not really punished for what it's doing at all. And I'm happy, for example, that President Trump has changed his rhetoric when it comes to Ukraine, rhetoric lately. But at the same time, we need to do more in order to stop this because it feels like there is no end in sight. There's like, you don't know how to stop them. And that's what scares me.
I would actually ask you about Trump's posture change. And I will tell
Mm-hmm.
you, as an American and someone who is also from Eastern Europe, I'm first gen. My parents are from Lithuania. And that's, I think, why we have a lot in common. And it's always good to, talk to people of the similar heritage from the same region of the world, even if we are a little translocated differently. Is that I think a lot of people in this discourse, what I've seen is that they're shocked. But for me, in Trump 1.0, he was actually very tough on Russia. So I've always been waiting for this posture to come back. And I understand he was trying to be giving the benefit of the doubt, seeing if being nice and respectful would bring Putin to the table with the Alaska summit. And everyone has different thoughts about the Alaska summit. And unfortunately, since the Alaska summit, Putin has, ordered more drones to fly into NATO airspace in the Baltics, Poland, even as far as Denmark, and possibly in France, according to different reports. And I think that is what prompted President Trump at the UN this week to retool and kind of recalibrate his posture. And I don't know who exactly is to credit for that, but I think it would have to be General Keith Kellogg, who is the envoy to Ukraine, and possibly some others. Maybe the newly appointed UN ambassador Mike Waltz. He's always been very tough on Russia there. So as a Ukrainian, what is it like hearing that posture? Because some people are like, well, he's going to taco, he's going to like change his mind. I think it is actually sincere because he even said something to the effect of, I want Ukraine to reclaim all territory that was taken as far back as 2014 and even beyond that. So, as a Ukrainian journalist and observer, what were your thoughts on his remarks and
I always
posts?
thought that he was actually pro-Ukraine, but in a different way, because the man is extremely simple in his train of thought. I'm not being like offensive here, but he's been trying to stop the war. He's been saying that like, forever. I want to stop the war. I want to stop the killing. I want to stop this, which is a noble cause. I don't think it's a bad thing to stop the war because, people are dying and it's no fun. No matter how pro-Ukraine and no matter how much I want Ukraine to win, but I also have to recognize that it comes at a huge cost. And, you have to make a calculation as to whether this is sustainable or not in the long term when it comes to fighting such wars, such high intensity wars. And I don't know, because, like, what the Democrats did back in the day, even though I'm still grateful to President Biden and everyone else, right, who for helping when it comes to weapons and money and everyone who supported us. Still, it's like, you can't do this forever by giving a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You need a strategy of some sort. You need to do something. So you either decide that you want Ukraine to win or you stop the war. And at the beginning, what President Trump did, he said, "Okay, let's try stopping the war." And how do you stop the war? And no matter again, no matter how much I liked or disliked some of the statements he made and some of the actions, but if you want the other party, and the aggressive party in this case is Putin, if you want them to be at the table, you kind of need to be nice to them. You can't just say like, "Hey, you suck. I hate you," and but let's negotiate. It doesn't work like that. I mean, it doesn't look pretty, but it's still a strategy. It's just that that strategy failed because I believe that President Trump, and he said that himself, that Putin let him down because he thought that he had some influence on him, like because it's not about friendship or anything, but like some people have more influence on each other than other people, right? So he thought that maybe he could like influence him and say that, oh, all right, okay, let's make this deal and let's end it, Vladimir. But Vladimir has different goals. That's the thing.
Mhm.
That's what Trump didn't factor in when he was like trying to do this, because he thought that maybe it's some kind of a mistake, that maybe like it's just like you have to have the right person in charge of the ship, so to speak, in order to make that deal. But it's really not that. At this stage in life, I think Putin, who is what, 72 or so, he really wants to make things happen before he leaves this world. And it's just there won't be any other opportunity to do that. So like, these final years, and I don't know how much he will, like how long he'll live, but let's say another decade, right? And or maybe a little bit more, but a decade or so, it's he needs to make it happen now. There won't be any other opportunities to do that. So that's why basically this whole well, not attitude, but this whole approach to ending the war failed, because it's not about Crimea, and it's not about those that southern part, east, like south and eastern southern part of Ukraine. It's really not about that. It's about Ukraine per se, that it shouldn't exist. And that's it. And there is no explanation as to why rationally, but it's just the way it is. Like, because when it comes to Ukraine, I think Russia has some sort of Freudian kind of complex fetish, if you know what I mean. It's like it's just so attached to it. It can't live without it, and it can't live with it. It is this whole conflict, this internal conflict. I understand that for many Americans and Westerners in general, it doesn't make any sense, but trust me, it does. And, they're showing it daily by sending missiles. For which purpose are you doing that? What are you doing that for? Like, there's no military gain in it. What are you destroying? Like houses? Why? For which purpose? We don't have any Hamas tunnels underneath. So it's like, this is a thing. Like, it's just so kind of, there's no goal, right? It's just doing things, just doing bad things, and still they don't get punished to the extent they're supposed to be punished for what they're doing. That what scares me.
It's like a toxic boyfriend who doesn't want to let you go and is
Yeah, that's
obsessively controlling you.
exactly the kind of comparison I used before, is that it's like this ex-husband who just can't he just can't accept that that you moved on, and that you're, oh my God, probably sleeping with somebody else now, and that's like, oh, and that's it. And it's just crazy in my opinion. And I don't think it's my opinion only. I think it's just general opinion. Especially since like, there are a lot of myths about why Russia invaded Ukraine. Some people still believe that it's about NATO. Well, I can guarantee you
Uh,
that it's not about NATO for one
no.
simple reason. Ukraine had no chances of joining NATO. And I know this firsthand because I was in touch. I was like in direct contact with some of the senior NATO officials who said like, no, guys, you're not joining anywhere soon. And I'm talking about 2021, 2020, and absolutely nothing. So Ukraine wasn't like, it wanted to join NATO, but NATO didn't want it like in it. And it's like it's pretty like well known. And the reason why I wanted to be in NATO is precisely because of what's happening. Yeah, there is absolutely no other reason. And this is exactly why the Baltic states, Poland, and everyone else in the late 1990s, right, in the early like millennium, why they joined NATO too. Is it because they were afraid of who, like Belarus? I don't think so. It's because of Russia, and Russia is like that. Unfortunately, it's just a country that because it doesn't really have much to offer, in the sense of like, its economy is all about selling fossil fuels, and that's it. It doesn't produce anything like high tech. It doesn't produce anything of any kind of shall I call it, added value of some sort, like, like a company, like, I don't know, like a Coca-Cola or some sort. No, nothing like that. So that's why it has this kind of imperialistic mindset, like in the 19th century, right? That it needs to expand in order to exist, because otherwise there is no point in its existence. So that's why why countries joined it back in the day, and why more countries joined it in 2022, or was it, wait, 2023? I think
Sweden
they
and
applied in
Finland. Mhm.
2022. Yeah. Sweden and Finland, why they joined it, it was precisely because of this. There's no other reason.
Yeah, anyone who's Eastern European, even from my posture as an American born to Lithuanian parents, I'd always been not like a, you know, how would you say it, like virulent or like, big proponent of NATO. I'm American first, and but it's very different than like the European Union. I think people conflate those two institutions, but it goes back to, I wanted to speak briefly to your point about Putin wanting to reconstitute the old Soviet Union or Imperial Russia. That's his goal, and I think a lot of Americans, and we're going to go into kind of debunking some
Mm.
things from both the right and the left because about the Ukraine question, because I would love to hear your thoughts on
Mm.
that. But no, he, for Americans watching who are like, why is Trump changing his posture? I think he understands that this is the bear. There's a great Bulgarian, excuse me, commentator who lives in Austria. Valina, I think is her name. I can recall the
Mm.
last name, but she talks about the dragon bear dynamic with China and Russia on the rise. And they're the bear, and they're kind of like this wounded bear, as you mentioned, that is a big petrostate. And I like oil and gas, but I think that Russia produces it for nefarious reasons. And the only way, sanctions are not working, unfortunately. I think the only way, I don't know, how do you go after their energy economy? But it's to shift away sales and shift away the incentive to buy from Russia. It would have to require the European Union developing reliable energy at home, restarting nuclear power plants. That's from my like professional standpoint, for my work outside of my journalism work. But that's the only way I feel like that you can really, I would say, paralyze his economy and make it like truly profound. But this kind of back and forth, with some European nations talking out of both sides of their mouth saying, we love Ukraine, we put the flag, do this, and then they're still buying derivatives from Russia, including oil and gas, while claiming to go net zero, which is a quandary to me. Like, why the heck are you doing this? This makes no sense. Like, you can't say you're for this and then simultaneously fund both sides of the war, which is beyond me. But let's talk about some kind of myths about Ukraine from an American, like the American debate. I'll start from the right. So I often hear people, I wouldn't say close associates, but I often see discourse. I don't believe this, but I'll play devil's advocate. So some people on the right, I wouldn't call them people who wield influence, but maybe very online folks who say Ukraine is very woke. As someone who is of Eastern European heritage, Baltic heritage, I know for a very fact that is not true because it's a very traditional society. It is a little more liberal than Russia, where, and I would say classically liberal. I don't, not progressive liberal. I think people are bastardizing the word and it's inappropriate to do that. We want to be as accurate as possible. But we keep hearing about Eastern Europe, especially Ukraine, being this woke paragon, which is why some people in America have reflexively opposed Ukraine since the 2022 invasion by Russia into Ukraine. What are your thoughts on that? Like, are you guys a woke culture? Because I don't see that, but I want to hear straight from a Ukrainian like yourself.
Look, the first time I heard this was probably in 2023. Somebody told me that, oh, you guys are woke. You're like, you're this. I'm like, what? I was I was like, what? And then I told this to some of my colleagues from different publications that I worked with at the time. They're like, what is this about? Because we didn't understand. We were like, what's up? Because nobody understood, where did this notion even come from? So, because we are a country that is, like you said, pretty traditional, if not outright hostile to the woke culture. So, I asked myself, and I asked Americans, how come this perception exists? Who made, like, who claimed that Ukraine is woke? Well, the first thing I found out is because we were originally connected to this Hunter Biden affair. So that one was like, yeah, I don't even know who Hunter Biden is, to be honest. In the sense, I mean, I know who he is, but like, it's like I was so not invested in these things. I always thought it was like, okay, whatever. Um, then it turns out that we are kind of an extension of the Democratic Party, which is also kind of funny because I think that a lot of Ukrainians are actually more on the Republican side, given
Yep.
how the Democratic presidents treated us. And I don't know. We talked a little bit about this, but I'm going to repeat that Since 1991, it was Bill Clinton who blackmailed us into surrendering nukes. Then it was Obama also who helped us destroy or take whatever it was, missiles that we lack
Start
right
two.
now.
Start
Yeah,
two.
yeah. Then in 2014, it was Barack Obama again who just let Putin take Crimea in broad daylight, and he didn't receive anything like in this, like, any shit, but he should have. He should have in huge quantities. He wanted to send us, or what? He sent us the blankets. I don't remember anymore.
Yeah.
So it was something like that. Um, then we had Joe Biden. Joe Biden was relatively better compared to this crowd because he at least agreed to give us weapons. But he, like, the first package was actually approved by the Republicans and the Democrats, like in huge quantities. So it wasn't just the Democrats who were doing this. But at the very same time, I have to be honest, like in late 2021, early 2022, Biden did nothing to stop Putin from invading Ukraine. On the contrary, he made it super like clear that you can do it. It's fine. We're
Minor
leaving.
incursion.
Yeah, yeah, we're leaving. We're fleeing. And I was in Kiev in January 2022, right? So I remember very well how like everybody was talking about the American diplomats fleeing, like literally fleeing, just okay, yeah, leaving now. That's it. It's like, oh my God, this doesn't look good. And then he just took the floor. I remember like probably late January, perhaps early February, and said like Putin decided to invade, and that's it. Yeah, well, cool. Thanks for telling us. And what now? And it's like, I don't want to like speculate or anything, but it just feels like, okay, he thought to himself, or like the establishment at the time thought to themselves, okay, let him take Ukraine as long as he doesn't invade NATO. But that's kind of stupid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, then he changed his mind. But also, like in 2021, the other thing that he did, he lifted sanctions on Nord Stream 2, which was super stupid. First, you say that first you lift them, then you say that you're gonna impose them once again. I mean, come on. Who's gonna be afraid of you? I mean, if you don't say that there will be some sort of ramifications, then nobody's gonna be afraid of you. And it just looked so bad. But okay, later on, he started helping. Nice, thank you. But again, helping, like I said before, it's like when you give like in small quantities, knowing that this is a little bit of a virtue signaling exercise, right? Because, oh yeah, we allocated 40 50 billion more for Ukraine, but that's not sustainable. You must, you got to be a kid if you think this is sustainable kind of approach, that every year you're going to spend 70 billion, 60 billion, I don't know, 100 billion on Ukraine just like that without explaining why you're spending it, on what is being spent, and so on. That's not how it works. And I'm really surprised that a lot of people don't understand that, and they think that Harris, or Kamala Harris, if she were to win, she would do something differently. The lady was very unpopular in Ukraine, actually. When she was the vice president, she did not have, like, I mean, like before the elections, she wasn't really popular among people. Nobody thought highly of her because she had a little bit of this mumbo jumbo approach in her speech when she was talking at conferences, especially this Munich security conference, because one of my colleagues, Ukrainian journalist, he went there and he said he was like not impressed at all. And yeah, so she wasn't really popular. It's just that for example, many demonized Trump. So many demonized Trump and said, no, 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 he's this Putin's friends, KGB agent, whatnot, which is strange because why would he be KGB agent if during his first term he actually did some good things? It doesn't make any sense. But when you don't know about what he did during the first term, perhaps this is because people don't know everything, right? They don't have the time to find out everything unless they're in the loop all the time. But you can't expect the average person to be in the loop all the time. And for example, even I didn't know that he approved javelins. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that he imposed the Nord Stream 2 sanctions. I didn't
Yep.
know that. I only found
Oh
out
yeah.
about it later. Yeah, I only found out about it later. And then when I found out about it, I was like, well, what's the problem? I don't understand. This is actually the better option, in my opinion, than this lady who's just, she just goes around saying nice things, which is very sweet. But unfortunately, this is not how I view the world. I don't view the world through the kind of virtue signaling, sugarcoating kind of talk. I don't need it. Maybe somebody else needs it. I understand there are a lot of people who like that. I'm just not into it. So, I would rather hear something negative, but something also that would lead to an outcome that is actually better.
I think that is what people underestimate the Eastern European character. It's like, just give it to us straight. Like, we don't need to be coddled because our families have been through a lot. We have a little bit of generational trauma, I guess, in it. So it's like, just be honest with
No,
us.
it's just that in Eastern Europe, if you smile without a reason, that
Yeah,
means there's something wrong
something's
with you.
weird. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not really cool to smile without a reason. So,
Yeah.
and I know that because when I'm not being interviewed, I'm not that smiley. So it's just that.
I know you've talked about criticizing the left, but I want to talk about them.
Mm,
I hate to say that, like, it was positive to see them learn where Ukraine was after the 2022 invasion by Russia. What is really irksome to me is that they made that issue like theirs. And
yeah,
Ukraine is supposed to be, let's think Eastern Europe, that whole kind of corridor. It's not supposed to be partisan. I think, which is why we connected initially. I think the depolitization of that issue, kind of like what happened in the late 80s when my parents were coming to the United States, when people were coming from Ukraine all over the Eastern Bloc, former Eastern Bloc, to the United States, where it was bipartisan. It was a truly bipartisan, nonpartisan issue. And I really dislike that they made it an issue and these people hadn't learned, they didn't know where Ukraine was on a map. That's how ridiculous it was. Or they had like previously conflated Ukrainian with Russian. All Eastern Europeaners or Balts are the same. Everyone's the same. They speak the same language, same food. There are some similarities. There's a lot of overlap, but there are some key unique differences. And I really hate that the flag of Ukraine has become this like democratic symbol in the US and
yeah.
even abroad. And I think you had issued some warnings. And I want you to speak more to this. Like, why should Ukrainians and those who support Ukrainians not fall into this, let's say, diatribe or this kind of not diatribe, but kind of this contrarian game of like right is bad, left is good. Because like you are seeing some changing and posturing, and we have to be patient as that plays out. But I think you had talked about this, and which is why we connected, that Ukraine has to be appealing to a lot of people, and you have the Trump administration for 4 years. You want to make sure that he's on your side, and he is slowly coming around again and coming back to it. I don't think he entirely lost, but they were trying to see, wait and see. And that's what you do with diplomacy. It's a lot more complex than what you think. It's not excusing Putin. We don't like Putin. I don't like Putin. I hate him with every fiber in my body because of
It's
what he's
good.
doing to Lithuania. And everyone who's normal should, because he's not a conservative. He's not traditionalist. Like, he's a very, very terrible man. And if when people truly know who he is, like, you have to get a visceral negative reaction from him because like he's terrorizing people, your country, and then he's trying to play
He's a
games in
killer. He is a killer.
the killer.
And what's
Yeah.
more, I think that he enjoys killing. That's why he doesn't stop. There's absolutely no reason for him to continue waging the war right now in Ukraine. There's no result. It's like there's like you're achieving nothing, right? If you're like conquering a little bit of land here and there, that's not, maybe it's tactical success, but it's not strategic success. You're gaining nothing. You're just spending a lot of lives on what? And I see a lot of people in the West being puzzled by that. But the reason is extremely simple. When you are a serial killer, you need to kill. And that's all. You don't need to have like, you don't need to look for any other explanations, some kind of intricate, complex explanations. You just like killing, you just like blood, you just like seeing that, oh my God, we conquered a little bit more of this land. We killed a little bit more of Ukrainians in their sleep. We did this, we did that. It brings you joy. Well, come on. I mean, you're dealing with a person who has nothing to do with Christianity, Judaism, nothing, even Islam, and it's like in its good version. But even though I'm very skeptical about that, but it's just it has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with values of any sort. It's just wow. And yet, yeah, I see that some people consider Russia to be more traditional. I don't know.
That's laughable.
Not sure. Yeah,
I haven't
that's
been there, but I have friends who are dissidents or like
mhm.
children of dissidents. And you talk to anyone who left pre 2010. I have a scholar friend who has told me, and I have friends who are Russian, who don't like the regime. And it's important to, make the distinction very clearly, because not everyone is supportive of the regime, but a lot of people in Russia are. But those who are
Yeah.
outside of Russia are not, generally speaking. And yeah, they say like, what traditionalism? Like, this is not traditional. And then what's also very interesting to me, I don't think people who aren't Eastern European recognize this. Some do. Some non-Eastern European folks are great at this, but like, how can you say that Ukraine is your brother or sister and you're simultaneously attacking and violating it? I don't understand that. Like, and that's the same logic they have used for the Baltics, for Poland. Like, oh, we love our brothers and sisters, but they especially do this twisted, contorted rationale for attacking Ukraine to like subvert you to make you Russian, even though there are some key distinct differences. So, like, how can you love Ukraine from the posture of Russia? Let's say we're thinking of them. And then simultaneously, I just don't understand that. Like, and I've been trying to communicate that to Americans. Like, Russia is not this traditional nice country, because how could they attack a cousin country like this? Like, it's unconscionable. But someone like, well, no, because of like Burisma and this. I'm like, take Burisma out of it. Burisma was controlled by the Kremlin, not natively Ukrainians. Maybe some Ukrainians were bought into Burisma, but it's not a natively Ukrainian thing. It's a holdover of the Russia era from Soviet times or whatever holdover, because they're very strategic about placing their apparatchiks in Ukrainian institutions. So we've had to try to explain that in American politics, that it's not inherently Ukrainian. It's holdover Russians who are just asserting themselves like that.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And you don't attack your brothers if you claim them to be your brothers, right? Uh, but they came up with this theory, or it's not a theory really, it's more like a claim that, yeah, Ukrainians are brothers, but they're being ruled by Nazis. Who are these Nazis? Zelensky is a Nazi. He is a Jewish man from Kryvyi Rih. I'm not sure how that can be like what are you talking about? But then like what's beautiful about Russia is that they come up with things all the time, new things. So it's Nazi, then it's about some kind of Jewish conspiracy that the Jews are taking over Ukraine, whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, okay, what else do you have to say? Because I think the actual truth is completely different, and it's just you wanting to conquer Ukraine. But obviously, you can't just Lavrov can't just go to the UN and say that, yeah, it's just because we want to conquer Ukraine. So they keep coming up with some kind of excuses that it's Nazis, NATO, Jews, who else? I mean, the only group that they
Capitalists.
did, yeah, the only group so far that they haven't weaponized are the Gypsies or the
Oh
Romas.
my
Let's
God.
call them that. And it's like,
Doesn't
but
everyone remember what they did to the Roma
I'm
and
pretty
Gypsies?
sure that is, this on the agenda. Soon we'll hear something about that because they just keep coming up with new and new theories all the time as to why they've attacked Ukraine. But the only reason they've attacked Ukraine is because they don't want for it to exist. And
Mm-hmm.
that's all there is. And they don't want for Poland to exist, and they don't
Nope.
want for the Baltic states to exist. They just don't want that. It's just, I don't know, it's a very, very twisted mentality. And it's very difficult to explain it to the Westerners, especially because a lot of Westerners are kind of, um, well, bedazzled maybe by some of their culture, like Dostoevsky and Tolstoy. We call it Tolstoyevsky.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, this complex soul. There's nothing complex. If you take Crime and Punishment, if you think it's complex, well, I have I have some news for you. It's very simple.
It's
It's
matter
very
of
simple.
fact.
There's a drunkard and a gambler who kills, I'm sorry, he acts as a grandma and her sister for absolutely zero reason. Why does he do it? Does he explain it? No, well, he has some explanation, but it's just, it doesn't make any sense. If you're fighting against social injustice, that's not how you do it. You don't axe grandmas because of it. And that's the whole thing, that what people in the West find to be so kind of, well, not alluring, but so mysterious and enigmatic, is actually has nothing to do with that. If you read the average Russian news daily, which are not available obviously for the Western audiences, but if you take the regular whatever news feed, it's you will see plenty of Raskolnikovs everywhere. who will be like, this, like, this dude killed somebody in St. Petersburg, this dude killed somebody in Kemerovo, this dude is like, for no specific reason. Why? Because most likely he was intoxicated, unhappy. What other reasons? And you find that mysterious. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I've seen those mysteries, and I can tell you there's nothing enigmatic about it. And the sooner the Western audiences kind of deconstruct this idea that Russia is something that you need to understand, like, you need this to understand that they're like have a different mindset, and it's like, no, if you drink a lot, I'm not gonna say that you should be trying that, but if you like binge drink for 7 days or so, your mind will be altered. You know that even after a couple of days, your mind will be altered. Your mindset and your perception of the world will be altered, and this is exactly what's the case with Russia. It's like if you drink a lot, you will start seeing Nazis everywhere.
Yeah.
You will start seeing a NATO expansion that is threatening you. What not? It's just how they do. I mean, this is not a healthy society. This is not a Western society. It's a society that's living a little bit in the Middle Ages, a little bit in the 19th century. There's a mix of everything. And a little bit in the USSR because of this, like, KGB kind of approach. But it's not a society that's based on any values at all. I don't know which values they're based on, except expanding and killing. That's all I know. Yeah, those are their values. That's correct.
So, Lesia, I wanted to ask you something along the lines of, this dynamic between Western Europe and Eastern Europe and how Americans should respond to that. So in the United States, we often poke fun of our Western European friends because they have trouble with free speech. London, I was just there. You go to certain corners of the city and you have posters that are mocking just how crazy the free speech laws are. But you go to places like Central and Eastern Europe, it is true you feel much safer. There is quite a bit more reverence for free speech, even in these emerging post-Soviet states. I've noticed that, like going back to Lithuania, visiting Poland for the first time just recently in Czech Republic. And I hope one day I get the privilege to go to Ukraine because I've always wanted to go. And I was talking with some friends about doing a like conservative American Ukrainian like immersion conference. And I hope one day that can happen. And I would love to somehow talk to you about like arranging something like that or getting something started. If I can't organize something because I'm overextended, I know people who would, but I think it really is important between our two countries to for people to go see Central and Eastern Europe just to realize like there's a lot in common. But speak to this dynamic where what is your like thoughts to like Europeans and Americans who are like, oh, we just have to only just stick to Western Europe, like and ignore Central and Eastern Europe. Central and Eastern Europe is on the rise. Poland is going to be one of the biggest economies, outplacing Japan very soon. Ukraine has signed we just signed a deal with your country, the reinvestment fund that Treasury Secretary Besant had signed with your then, I believe, I forget what, she's not your prime minister, but your then,
Yeah,
yeah.
she was
So
the Minister of Economy or
yes,
something. Yeah.
yes, Servidenko, I think is her
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
Yeah, and so with now Prime Minister Servidenko, but when she was economic minister, Besant's equivalent in Ukraine, they signed that deal for the reinvestment rebuilding fund for minerals, energy, economic opportunities, and the like. So talk about that from your vantage point as a Ukrainian, but I think it even extends beyond Ukraine. I think Westerners fall into this trap, and everyone falls into this trap. Like, oh, let's ignore these little like podunk countries and the bloodlands and their Slavic ways or their Baltic ways and da da. They're little Chihuahua countries, or we have to like support Russia. Some of them say, but I think even those who claim to be against Russia, pro Ukraine, still fall into this dynamic of Western Europe. Okay, great. Eastern Central Europe, let's dismiss them because they just don't know they haven't had freedom long enough. So what is your thought on that?
Well, okay, let's start with what I think of what I make of the Europeans today. Unfortunately, the situation in Europe has extremely deteriorated. And the recent decision by the UK, France, particularly, to recognize Palestine at a time when this is happening, at a time when Israel is, well, trying to basically return the hostages and just eliminate Hamas, it's just beyond me. And I'm not sure as to how they see this process. Like, okay, you are what are you doing? You're rewarding Hamas. Essentially, you are doing that. Even though they're saying that they're not, this is just, come on. Well, who are you fooling here? What you're doing is exactly that. And it sends a message to all those terrorist groups. And Hamas, by the way, is supported by Russia. It has like the IDF combat medics I talked to told me that the Hamas tunnels, they even contain instructions in Russian.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, I mean, no, obviously this is really a really, really bad situation. And there is a reason why in 2023 it was launched on October 7th. And that's Putin's birthday, by the way. And
Oh,
I
interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think so. If I'm not mistaken, it's
Oh,
his
close in that
birthday.
neighborhood.
Yeah, it's his
Interesting.
birthday. And the thing is that it was launched for a reason because it was part of the plan to basically start a war in that region, which is always kind of problematic. And it was very easy to do that. And so they did that. And I just don't understand people who can't see this grander picture, which is evident. And, but the reason why the UK and France did it is not because they like Palestine so much. I don't think so. I don't think they care about it that much. But because the population of Europe has changed. You see, it has changed immensely over the last decade, especially since 2015, but even before that. And what was once called multiculturalism, which is fine. I think it's your society isn't supposed to be super homogeneous with only people being white or people being something else. That's fine. But this is not the case right now. I mean, the if you go to Paris, because the last time I was in Paris was in 2022, I did not recognize the city I once wanted to live in.
Hmm.
I honestly, as a teenager, I thought I would be living there because I speak pretty decent French. I like the French culture. I like their cuisine. I thought it would be a lot of fun to live there. But in 2022, I was like, I don't think so. I was out of there in a split second. That's how much it's changed in my lifetime. So it's gonna change more. And whatever people on the left say, because even on the left, I met some leftists who are appalled. One was from Barcelona. I'm sorry, I went on a date with him, and he said that it's terrible. It's terrible. Yeah, it's terrible what happened to Barcelona in just the span of a decade. It's like it went from one city to totally another city because of migration. And we're not gonna lie, it's because of migration. It's because even if you take in people for very noble reasons, you need to make sure that you integrate them. And some people, whether you like it or not, cannot be integrated. And that's the problem. And you can try your best to do that. But if they can, they can't. And this is what we're seeing. And when it comes to freedom of speech, this is something you mentioned, obviously, even 5 years ago, maybe I don't know, even 7 years ago, it was just impossible to talk about immigration. The moment you touched upon it in Europe, you were labeled a racist, Islamophobic, what not. It was absolutely impossible to talk about it. And now it's a little bit too late. Well, maybe not too late, but it's a bit late because, things are changing and now you need to appease those people because they are becoming voters in your country. They're becoming like, they're impacting your policy. And the UK, I haven't been there in a very long time. But ju even judging by what I see, like on social media or not on social media when I talk to people, because obviously, I don't want to stay inside my echo chamber. Things are not looking good. Things are not looking good. If for the second time in 2 years, you have Muhammad as a top popular name of kids being born. Yeah, Obviously, our beloved scientists, PhD holders, statistic gurus will tell us that no, but you should look at it the other way. That, with 90% or whatever, 95% of everyone else, it isn't called Muhammad, but it's like, this is not how you judge things. If before that it was 98 or 99%, and now it has changed even like by 2.5 or whatever percent, that shows a trend. Obviously, what you want to wait until it's 100%, or what's the deal here?
Mm.
But it's like it's a trend, and it will increase because a lot of people don't want to give birth, because everyone is like on their self identification journey. Am I a man? Am I a woman? Am I a cat?
Girl
Am I something
boss,
else? Yeah,
trad wife. Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I can't. I need to think. Maybe you shouldn't. I don't know. I mean, it's fine if you don't want to have a kid. Maybe it's just not your thing. That's also fine. But I see a lot of these, like, people who are like, I haven't found myself yet. Like, yeah,
It's
you're
a problem in
45.
America too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you should, maybe you kind of need to think about it. Sorry. It's like, don't be like, no offense, but it's just a little bit, well, comic in my opinion. And so there's a lot of things in Western Europe right now that's just not cool at all compared to, well, Central Eastern Europe, even though they don't like being called that.
Hmm.
But okay, let's just, for the purpose of this talk, let's call Poland whatever, Central Eastern Europe country. And if you go to Poland, well, it's a completely different world. It's much safer. There's like no question that it's much safer than Stockholm, Malmo, where I lived. That one is notorious, and for all the right reasons. For all the right reasons, it's notorious. Paris, London, most likely,
Berlin.
and yeah, Berlin. So I mean, it's not as progressive, but maybe that's good. Maybe it should stay that way. Let's reduce the progressive component a little bit because it's really not helping. And when it comes to, like, just life in Europe, like I said, it has changed a lot. And what's even more worrisome is that the European kind of social policy is not going to be sustainable. Who's going to fund it in 5, 10 years? I have no idea.
If people
You
are
will
not
have to bring
reproducing.
in, yeah, you will have to bring in even more immigrants. And where will you take them? Where? Well, I'm pretty sure we understand what kind of immigrants will come around. And yeah, and they will start saying that this is their land, that this is like, that they, because they acquire citizenship, suddenly they're a Swede. No, you're not. If I acquire a citizenship of some sort, unless I'm tied to it by some kind of, I don't know, religious blood stuff, then I'm not, I'm not gonna be that. I'm not gonna be British just because I receive a British passport. I wasn't born in Britain. I have nothing to do with Britain. So it's like it's a different culture, even though I respect it, I love it, but it's just not how it works. And but they think differently, and they know exactly how to promote their rights. They understood the system. They cracked the matrix, that this is how you do it, which is funny. I thought it was funny a long time ago. I remember when I had this, actually he's Palestinian. I had this classmate in Sweden. I studied in Sweden, and he was saying that I think back then Denmark banned burqas. I'm not, yeah, I think so, because Denmark is actually one of the more kind
Yeah.
of like well, strict countries when it comes to immigration. So
Mhm.
it's not as liberal as many other countries, which I believe is a good decision. And he was claiming that Denmark has no right to ban burqas. I was like, why? Why? Oh, you're actually here, like, he had a Swedish passport by then, but he was still like, a Palestinian and stuff, Arabic. He's like, oh, but because it's a secular country and um you're supposed to respect all religions and so on and so on. I'm like, back home, do you respect them? Do you respect them back home? Show me at least one Arabic country, an Islamic country that respects diversity and is going to be like doing the way things the way you see fit. And like, yeah, but this is what makes Europe different. Yeah, but it makes Europe different. But at the very same time, it feels like, you can do anything here, like whatever you want, right? And if something doesn't go your way, you're gonna start screaming, terrorizing people. You're gonna drop a bomb here and there. It's just, kill people, stab people. What the hell? I mean, if you come to Europe, adapt. But the thing is that unfortunately this hasn't happened because the policies were such that nobody asked you to adapt. Only recently, Sweden changes laws that you actually need to know Swedish in order to get citizenship. Can you believe how crazy
Hmm.
that is? Like,
Yeah, in the
yeah,
21st century.
yeah. You didn't have to even know Swedish, which is your own like language, in order to receive citizenship. It's like I don't understand. I mean, it's just super crazy. So, but unfortunately, now it's a little bit too late to deal with this, in my opinion.
That's why I think
You can still take some action, but it's things are not looking good at all.
that's why I think, like I said, this lady Valina, who does a lot in foreign
Mm,
policy, a great follow based out of Vienna, she
mm,
said that possibly the European Union could splinter because you have West and East and all these different, countries. Not saying like I think the EU is flawed, and I'm an American and I have some skepticism of it, but I think you're going to even see increasingly greater divisions between the Nordics, Balts, Poland, Ukraine, if Ukraine gets entry into EU. I know it's on track to do it, but I'm not sure how soon they will get it. And you can enlighten me and my audience more about that. But that's why I think I tell people do not sleep on the Eastern European or former Soviet blocs because they have a lot in common with the US. They don't like socialism. You guys are very skeptical
yeah.
and find socialism anathema to your thinking. And so I think people forget that because like the Cold War is like a couple generations removed. These younger kids don't remember socialism. It was their grandparents, if anything, that may have experienced it, or they don't have like you should have
Actually,
neighbors
they
who's like,
idealize socialism. They
yeah,
think
now we
it's
see,
really
yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, we do see that because of the universities and the culture and TikTok. Ironically, you're talking about how great socialism is on a platform
Mm,
that was deep. It's a default byproduct of capitalism. Ironically enough, but it's interesting speaking to the commentary about like hostilities in Israel and Hamas. The countries where some of the worst Holocaust atrocities happened, Lithuania had some of the
mhm.
worst. Ukraine had horrible
Yeah.
dealings with like all these countries, our ancestral homelands, your homeland, had
Mm,
horrible Nazi atrocities. But today, even with some of the kinks that they're working out about like remembrance and reparations or kind of like forgiveness and think like repairing relations, even with those different idiosyncrasies panning out, like in Lithuania, they've had to wrestle with that. I bet in the same in Ukraine. It is better to be Jewish in those countries which had horrible Nazi atrocities
absolutely.
today than it is in Western Europe.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, like I said, I was like also Jewish, and well, if I go around in Europe and Western Europe saying that I support Israel, which I obviously do, um,
Same.
well, the response wouldn't be great.
Oh,
Um,
that's a shame.
Sometimes people remove me, sometimes people said things, and which is even funnier is that some of my friends I used to study with in Ukraine, for example, right now they live abroad, and suddenly they became such free Palestine lovers. And you don't even understand where this came from because you don't understand anything about Palestine. And you don't understand what free Palestine means. Free Palestine has nothing to do with Palestine being a separate state. It's free Palestine is from the river to the sea, which means everything. So it means there's no Israel and
Mhm.
that's it. But people don't understand that. They can't name the river, they can't name the sea, they can't like do anything. They just chant because it's cool. Because socialism is also cool, right? A kid who never saw socialism, maybe they mistake it for social democracy like Sweden
Socializing at
or
a
something.
party.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like
That's some
maybe they
Americans.
maybe they think that it's about being something like Sweden or Denmark again, yeah, sure. I mean, that model exists and some people love it. Some people don't. It depends on your life and what you want because a lot of Swedes they go abroad, for example, even to the US to make a lot of money because it's impossible to do that. In
They
Sweden,
take
you're
too many taxes.
like yes, like it's not yeah, it's about taxes. No, but it's just also about philosophy that
Hmm.
you're supposed to be on the same level as everyone else. There's this rule called Jante rule that everyone is supposed to be more or less the same.
Hmm.
That there's like, that you shouldn't be standing out. There's, no
Hmm.
point. You never heard that? Jante law. I'm sorry, it's called
No.
Jante law. You can look it up. It's this idea that everybody is pretty much the same, so well, it should be pretty much the same, even if they're not. But they don't understand when they talk about, for example, socialism as in the USSR. They don't even understand what the USSR is. But okay. But I'm not here to explain what the USSR is. Um, but they think that it's something really cool that that you had this and you had that, and I saw this kid post on X not that long ago about some kind of get together where they had this transgender flag that had the GDR the
I saw
Eastern
that post from a
yeah
girl, like a
yeah, yeah,
girl
yeah,
with rainbow
exactly,
color
exactly.
hair. Yeah.
Eastern Germany, and they thought that this actually worked. I mean, guys, you come from your own country. You should be like, well versed in your own history. Do you understand what GDR is and what Stasi was? You would be out
Hmm.
with your transgender stuff in a
Hmm.
split second. You would just go to jail. And possibly, I don't know, sent to Moscow and from Moscow to Gulag. Thank you for your
Yep.
time. Like, I mean, but kids are like, I don't know, and I don't understand how this is happening because a lot of them have it, like, they went to the university, they studied. So you must know something, right? You must make some sort of conclusions. But I can tell you that as an Eastern European, when I studied in Sweden, it was almost, I don't know, I wouldn't call it crazy, but it was weird to talk to them because they live in some sort of other world where where actually things that don't make sense make perfect sense. And you're like, yeah, guys, but I mean, look at this, look at that. And they weren't even that pro-Ukraine. They were like, yeah, Ukraine is okay, but you guys are racist.
Ah, so they threw
Yeah,
that
you
out
guys
there.
are
Lovely.
racist. Yeah, you guys are racist. You guys are, yeah, this is probably will be funny for the American audience who thinks that we're woke, but actually, actually, the woke crowd deems us racist, and you guys are not, you know, not cool. Not cool compared to there's Muhammad over here from Palestine. That's better. That's much, much better. And you're like, what's going on in your world? How did this how did this happen? Because to me this makes zero sense, but to them it does.
It's contrarianism and it affects both sides, as you know.
Yeah.
On the right, absolutely, and we police our side from the
Hmm.
American side. And it's just the right needs to do, or the left, excuse me, needs to do it better too. And I will never for the life of me understand people who have simultaneously pro-Ukrainian pins and pro-Hamas pins. That makes, I'm like, I understand why they do it. To me, it's
Yeah.
just like, really, you're just hopping on a bandwagon to feel cool and special and all this. And this is why I think having this discussion with you is really important. Where I think conservatives in America, not everyone, but some are like, we can't have transatlantic relationship with people. We can't talk to people. We have to be isolationists. We can't talk. I'm like, that's so boring to isolate yourself just to America because there are people like us. I would say you who fall into this. Like, and I have a lot of European friends who, have similar ideals, love freedom, dislike socialism, want free market economics, want the same opportunities like the United States, because we should be a shining example, and we have been historically, of what a country should aspire to. And granted, we can't control what you guys do in your respective countries, but we try to be a good example. And
Mm.
I think I heard Zelensky say in one of his recent remarks, your president, that he wants to have free market economies. And I don't know exactly if that's happening there, and you have to go into it. But when I heard him say like he wants Ukraine to be a free market economy, I was like, yeah, like the rest of the former Eastern Bloc countries, Poland, the Baltics, etc. Like I've always wanted to see Ukraine in that same position like Lithuania was. And it hurts me. It like makes me sad as like an American of Lithuanian descent. Like Ukraine hasn't had the opportunity because bureaucrats have stifled it. Sometimes even my former presidents, like you said, Bill Clinton, with the Budapest memorandum that really screwed you guys over, and really
Yeah,
has
that was
stifled your
bad.
growth. And so it's like I think dialogue like this is really important because like everyone thinks like you have to go through the technocrats at Brussels. I'm like, that's not what you have to do. We can have discussions like this where it's more nuanced. Not everything is black and white. And you see that yes, Eastern Europe is still very based traditionally, pretty conservative by American standards, you know, and you guys just want to be independent and free. So Lesia, some final thoughts to round out our conversation. What do you want people to take away from our conversation? Because I love the fact that you talked not only about Ukraine, a little bit about what's happening in Europe. And I think people are understanding, like, yeah, Eastern Europeaners understand because where was Western Europe in World War II? A lot of the times, like they were kind of making bad deals with, Molotov Ribbentrop, and then also, kind of turning a blind eye to definitely turning a blind eye to Stalin because they were aligned with Russia in some regards, some Western countries. So for American audiences, those who are younger watching, what do you want them to take away? Like, I think we should have a relationship with Ukraine. I think from a political standpoint, personally speaking, I would like to interact with more, libertarian and conservative Ukrainians because I think there's a lot to exchange and to dialogue with. And even those who are not even conservative, I think there's a lot of similarities. Our families have gone through the same things. I don't know anyone who doesn't have a relative who went through the gulag: Ukrainian, Lithuanian, Pole, Latvian, Estonian, Finnish, from Nordic Baltics, former Eastern Bloc countries. So there's a lot of similarity and synergy to be had. And maybe it's me selfishly wanting this because, like, I am from, my family's from that region of the world. And I hope those who are not also from Eastern European, but are American and interested in geopolitics, like, we want to have good relationships with countries like Ukraine. We want to make sure you guys are kind of coming into our orbit, be free market, be free, and all this and that. So what do you want to expound to the listeners as we round out our conversation? That was a little
I
long winded for me, but I want to hear your thoughts.
You know, to the younger generation, I want to say that, guys, if you think that communism, socialism, and everything else are cool, I guarantee you they're not cool. So this is not something that's cool. Yeah, obviously, social justice may exist, and it may, like, you may have like larger taxes or higher taxes or whatever, or you can have some sort of programs and so on. But generally, these are not cool concepts in real life. On paper, they look lovely. They look lovely, but in real life, it's unattainable unless you force people to do that. And people are born unequal, you like it or not, but they're not born equal. They're born into certain systems. They're born with certain looks, certain abilities, and it's not something you can change. And it's capitalism exists for a reason. It's because it reflects our ability to attain goals. And obviously it's not always fair, and you need to interfere sometimes to make sure that uh, other people from other backgrounds who are talented but don't have the means to do something can get those means. That's fine. I don't see a problem with that. Otherwise, it's not cool. When it comes to Ukraine and Russia's war in Ukraine, you need to understand that it's a war that has no rational explanation. So you can't find a rational explanation to that war. It's just the way it is. Whatever arguments you've heard, like NATO expansion, or I don't know, Nazis or something else, those are lies because, like I said, Ukraine had no chance of joining NATO, and if it were to join NATO, it would not have a war with Russia. And it's just the way it is. And Nazis in Ukraine is another thing which I find to be fascinating, so to speak, in the sense that there are plenty of countries out there who have a Nazi problem. Like big time, big time. Like Hamas. What do you think Hamas is? It's actually a Nazi organization, more or less, because its goal, and it has, it hasn't been an official paper to that end, right? It has a statute of some sort where it says that it wants to eradicate Israel. How much more genocidal can you get? You know, and yet it has the support of some people because they are allegedly the freedom fighters. They're not freedom fighters. Well, like, guys, come on, like, zoom out, take a look at everything. So whatever Nazis exist in Ukraine, they are not in power, definitely, and they define nothing. Is we're just another normal state which wants to be independent and to live its life. I mean, that's all there is to it. There's no other explanation to Russia's war than just not allowing us to live the way we want. And we don't present any threat to Russia because we don't want we're not a nation that seeks to expand. Even though Russia has some of the territories of Ukraine that we used to have, like Kuban or Belgorod or even Kursk. I'm not sure. I'm not like big on that. But you know, we don't want them back. Thanks. That's fine. That's fine. We just want to live. We just want to live within the 1991 borders. That's all we want. Um, so I think those are the main takeaways. But other than that, I think probably the last one thing I want to add is that precisely because Russia's war on Ukraine is so irrational, you need to make sure that it stops. Because irrational things are the most dangerous things out there. The rational ones can be dealt with, but irrationality, that's a totally different realm. And and you need to make sure that Putin loses this war in some way, even if he gets to keep, well, even though I'm not keen on that, but even if he gets to keep some of the territory, he needs to understand that this war did not attain his strategic goals. That you need to punish him in a way that, I don't know, allow more strikes on Russia, allow everything, let the population of Russia feel it, you know, that you can't do such things without ramifications. And I know it's not going to be popular. I can already see all these headlines if Ukraine starts, I don't know, bombing Russia big time, which it should, in my opinion. You know, it should, because that's how wars are. That's you can't make sure that the war is perfect and immaculate. Somebody will die. Somebody who deserves it, somebody who doesn't deserve it. It's just the way it is. I actually took this example on my social media when the Allies were bombing Dresden in 1945. During the course of 3 days or so, they killed 25,000 people. Yeah, that's bad, but it's how wars look like if you want to win. And if you want to just keep like losing people and just wait for what miracle, it's not gonna happen. And you know, we definitely need to bomb Russia more. Mostly their plants, especially their oil plants and stuff like that, something that keeps their economy afloat. That for sure, but also their military targets, everything, even some civilian, I guess, if it's like, you know, appropriate. But there is no other way. I'm sorry. Even if we say that okay, the US slaps sanctions tariffs on India and China, it's still not gonna help on the battlefield. It will take a lot of time for that to have effect, you know, but you can't wait forever. Our resource isn't limitless, you know, it's not infinite. So I'm sorry, but I have no other solution. You really need to make sure that Ukraine has all the weapons foremost, to finish the job, because we can't allow this war to go on forever. It's not going to be in Ukraine's favor if we go on forever. I can guarantee you that, because we just don't have the kind of resource that Russia has. That's all there is to it. So the sooner we deal with this, the better.
That really does put things into perspective. And I think we in the United States are extremely lucky that we don't have this. And I really appreciate you coming on to talk to me about this wide ranging set of topics. And I hope people maybe watching who are kind of skeptical of Ukraine listen to someone like you who could offer a more nuanced perspective that appeals to their senses and gets them to kind of realize and maybe curious to learn about Ukraine kind of from a different vantage point than they've been fed. So Lesia Dubenko,
Thank
Ukrainian
you.
journalist. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. We're going to include everything in the show notes so everyone can link up with you, your writings, follow her Twitter. She has very spicy, unique takes. It's
Thank
been a
you.
pleasure, and I hope at some point we can connect in the future in person.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to meeting you in person.